Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening. Should felons in prison have voting rights? And so I'll add that because I'm wondering, period. My question is, should felons, period, have voting rights? So this article is about people that are incarcerated. Should they also have voting rights? And so um, I'm going to read this article. So this is out of politics. Patricia Ma. And so this is a big discussion on our new, well, I don't think it's that new, but okay, so the 360 is a feature designed to show you diverse perspectives on the day's top stories. Okay, so should felons in prison be allowed to vote? Okay, and so I'm gonna click on this.
This is the most powerful marketing data in Los Angeles, connecting your business with the right local consumers on TV. You keep Los Angeles moving. We'll bring the advertising solutions that make your business grow. Your future is here. Spectrum Reach. Never stop reaching.
So I believe that people commit crimes, they pay the price. When they get out of jail, I believe they certainly should have the right to vote. But I do believe that even if they are in jail, they're paying their price to society, but that should not take away their inherent American right to participate in our democracy.
Should people convicted of sexual assault of the Boston Marathon bomber, should they be able to vote
while incarcerated?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But part of the punishment when you're convicted of a crime and you're incarcerated is you lose certain rights. You lose your freedom, and I think during that period, it does not make sense to have an exception for the right to vote.
But people who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation. Bernie Sanders suggesting that someone that would use an event that is such a tradition in America, like the Boston Marathon, to as an opportunity to maim and murder scores of people, including children, Sean. And these individuals should be allotted a right to vote. Are you kidding me? It's crazy that we're even talking about this.
Okay, I was trying to stop that. So I don't know if you're looking at a red car right now. I think that's an ad. So, what do you think? Do you think felons in prison as well as out of prison should have the right to vote, or do you think felons out of prison should have more a right to vote because they paid their dues, they served time? And so, this is a topic that's being hotly debated right now. Um, and it's titled "Should Felons in Prison Also Should They Have the Right the Voting Rights?" And so, what is happening? Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders made provocative comments about voting rights during a recent presidential candidate town hall, saying that he thought felons, even though still in prison, should be granted the right to vote in elections. The White House hopeful said that incarceration should not take away their inherent American right to participate in our democracy. Currently, only two states allow incarcerated citizens to vote, and those two states being Maine and Sanders' home of Vermont. Okay, so while there's debate, it's suddenly a campaign issue now, as Sanders' comments have spurred other Democratic candidates to share their views on this topic. So, California Senator Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor, said that we should have that conversation about granting prisoners the right to vote, but a day later appeared to hedge, saying there has to be a serious consequence for the most extreme types of crimes. Pete Buttigieg, mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is against the idea. Part of the punishment when you're convicted of a crime is you're incarcerated and you lose certain rights. So whether the offense was violent or non-violent, it is also part of the debate. And I believe this is hotly being debated as of now. So progressive Democratic Republican Alexandria Os, Cia Ocasio Cortez weighed in on tweeting instead of asking, should the Boston bomber have the right to vote? Try, should nonviolent person stopped with a dime bag lose the right to vote? Because that question reflects way more people. So Democratic candidates Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro say that they back letting nonviolent felons cast ballots behind bars, but draw the line at violent prisoners. So some people say that nonviolent prisoners should have the right to vote, and people who have already paid their dues or have already served time and they're out on parole should have the right to vote. Um, and then some people say that people who have violent crimes based on their crimes of what they've committed, they should not be given the right to vote. So Democratic candidate Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro say that they back letting nonviolent felons cast ballots behind bars. But they do, however, draw a line at violent prisoners. So what's next? The movement to restore voting rights to felons has gained some momentum in the recent years. So in Florida, legislation to restore voting rights to felons except murderers and felony sex offenders has passed the state house. So the bill that would implement the constitutional amendment was approved by voters in November midterm elections. But in other states like Iowa, Hawaii, and New Mexico, measures have stalled. So the idea for granting voting rights to offenders currently in prison remains a controversial one. And for the Democratic candidates, a potential gauge of their outlook on crime and punishment. So the perspectives on the issue is felons should have no say in shaping the law by voting. Society punishes convicted felons by denying them control over their own affairs. Permitting them to exercise control over society's affairs by voting would not only irrational is not only irrational but unjust. Incarcerated criminals should not have a say in shaping criminal law. Okay, so rapists should not be allowed to dilute the vote of rape victims. The crook sent to prison for election fraud has no business taking part in the next election. Jeff Jacoby of Boston Globe. So it is not unreasonable to allow prisoners to vote. Prisoners lose many of their rights when they go to prison, but they can't serve on a jury from a prison cell. They cannot own guns, and both of those are probably reasonable prescriptions, and they probably should not own guns in the first place. But the prisoners do not lose all of their rights in prison. They are entitled to practice their religion and they can challenge the conditions of their confinement as well. So, taking away prisoners' liberty is already a heavy punishment. So, allow them to cast an absentee ballot is not an unreasonable privilege. Andrew Novak, Daily Beast. And so it goes on to stress that Democrats will gain support by punishing or not pushing felon voter rights. Okay, so they want to push this issue, and this is hotly debated. So that doesn't make it right, is what some people claim. So it looks as if almost all felons are Democrats. Okay, so here they go with the dividing line here. So it says it looks as almost all felonies are felons are Democrats. So felons are not just like everyone else. They are even more likely to vote Democratic than was previously believed. This guarantees that some Democratic supporters will continue their effort to get felons to the polls. So if Democrats fight to achieve felon and enfranchisement, they can count on having an even more loyal voting bloc. So Democrats' desire to let felons vote is understandable, but criminals shouldn't cast deciding votes that overrule the policy preferences of law-abiding Americans. This is John R. Lott Jr. by the National Review. So the consequences of being in prison include losing some rights. I'm sick of the redemption BS, which we know what that means. Some of us do. You want redemption, serve your time, and pay the consequences, which include getting some of your rights taken away. Oh, boo hoo hoo. Felons feel disenfranchised. Guess who else feels slightly disenfranchised? The people who lost everything, lost loved ones, or died because of the actions of the selfish felons. Tommy Warren, Fox News. Maine and Vermont allow inmates to cast ballots. Other states should too. So mandatory disenfranchisement is constitutional. The 14th Amendment allows the government to restrict the right to vote because of the participation in rebellion or other crime, but there are few good reasons for the practice, and the best argument outside of the case from custom and tradition is that committing a serious crime voids your right to have a say in political process. So you lose your liberty, your place in civil society, and the freedoms that come with it. But doing it that way, subjecting prisoners to a kind of social death, is in conflict with the idea of inalienable rights that cannot be curtailed. So this is Jamil Boy and New York Times. So repeal the civic death sentence imposed on prisoners. But for all the outrage, Sanders critics seem clueless about the history and practice of barring prisoners from voting. As Sanders pointed out in the town hall, the constitution of his state, Vermont, was enfranchise prisoners as enfranchised prisoners from the beginning without any del- deleterious political or social effects. So if you believe that incarceration exists to rehabilitate the wayward and to reintegrate them into society, you'll probably warm to the idea of giving them the vote. So that's Jack Schaefer, Politico magazine. Sanders misses the point, okay, of incarceration. Now, if you're just joining us from CNN, this may shock you, but when you're in prison, you lose rights. It's called prison, not spring break, so on. It's not a slippery slope when denying voting rights to prisoners because the slope doesn't exist. You're in jail and there's no freedom, so you can't even vote with your feet. But in the socialist mind, sense doesn't apply. Socialists disguise their thirst for power as a greater good, which means pretending to care while taking control. Greg Gutfeld out of Fox News. So there's different opinions by people who are either for the idea or against the idea. And some of these people, mind you, they're heavily involved in politics or critical of different political opponents on either side, whether it be Democratic or Republican views. And some of these people are Republicans, most of them that I've read, and then some of the others are Democrats. So there's a hotly debated topic whether or not should felons in prison have voting rights? What about people who are nonviolent offenders? What about people who committed murders and sexual crimes? Should they even be included in this spectrum, or should they be there? Should there be a line drawn where those people are no way, no how allowed to vote because of the crimes they've committed? And the scale of the crimes they committed. And then what about people who have been released from prison and they've paid their dues and they've already served time for their ill wills, their crimes? Should they have the right to vote, or should it just be people that are only specifically allowed to vote are the non-violent offenders, non-sexual predators? So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for listening. This is one to think about. It's a very hotly debated topic. What do you think? Who would you allow to vote? Do you think all of them should not have the right to vote? This is something that maybe pretty soon we may be hearing a lot more about. Thanks for listening.